We need to talk about conservatives at war. No, I'm not talking about Brexiteer versus Remainer or Boris versus Cameron or whatever civil war you've seen in the Conservative Party recently. I'm talking about the actual divisions between the different types of conservatism that you will need to know for studying A-level politics. Now, should be aware that any essay question you get asked on conservatism is going to be asking you about agreements and disagreements within conservatism. So far, we've looked at Burke and we've looked at Hobbes, and it's all very friendly between them with their little state of war. But they are broadly in line with each other, although Burke develops conservatism far further. So what we're going to do in this video is I'm going to outline the three main types that you need to be aware of. And then I'm going to do what I said I was going to do in the previous video, which is talk about how traditional conservatism can be applied to the society and the state, but also kind of showing how these attitudes change as conservatism develops and changes over time. Just a few kind of reminders, the things I kind of like to say, like all ideologies are a product of their time. So in many ways, conservatism changes just because time moves on, and as thinkers come along, they reflect the views of their time. Secondly, normally at this point, YouTubers seem to say things like and subscribe. I'm not going to ask you to do that because you don't know if you like the video yet. So I'll tell you what, I'll make you a deal. If at the end of the video you liked it, then like it and then subscribe. If you thought it sucked, then don't. Deal? Cool. Right, let's flip over to my little mini Simon. Mini Cox. I need to think of a better nickname. And types of conservatism. Let's have a little look. Now, there's three. Now, obviously, we're looking at the A-level here, so I'm going along with the A-level specification. You could argue there are lots and lots of different types of conservatism, the same with socialism and liberals and all that kind of stuff, but we're going to break it down into the three main types. And so far, we have exclusively been talking about traditional conservatism, which have a whole bunch of core views. But in particular, they believe that society should be a hierarchy. Remember, Hobbes has his king and queen at the top in his Leviathan book. But with this idea of paternalism, that we should be looking out for those beneath you, but also kind of governing and instructing and providing law and order. Then we get the development of traditional conservatism into something called one nation conservatism. And in our next video, we're going to be looking at a man called Benjamin Disraeli, who was prime minister in the 1800s and Victorian period. And one nation conservatism brings conservatism a little bit more to the left that way. And it kind of starts to bring in this idea that conservatives need to be socially responsible. It takes this idea of noblesse oblige kind of even further and starts to kind of talk about all of us as one nation. We are all in this together. And he brings in some laws that actually specifically are designed to aid and benefit those who are poorer in society. And when we look at Disraeli, I will flesh that out. But broadly speaking, these two forms of conservatism have quite a large overlap. And you could argue that one is a kind of an inevitable development of the first. Like it's a story that kind of winds along, but it's the same tale. But then the third type of conservatism arguably isn't conservatism at all, perhaps, because it's called the New Right. And what the New Right does, is it pulls together two different strands of different ideologies and kind of fudges them together to create New Right, which we see in the 1980s in Britain and America. It combines the ideas of neoliberalism. Okay, so that's a different ideology. Liberalism, neoliberalism, meaning modern new liberalism, with neoconservatism, especially traditional values and structures. And so, in many ways, the New Right is not a development of traditional conservatism, but something new. Something different. A conservative might well disagree with that assessment. A conservative might say, actually, no, it's as much a natural development as one nation was from traditional. But I think I would argue that it was not. It was something very different that especially had very different views when it came to the economy and to human nature and society, as we will see as we look through these videos. But these are the three different attitudes that you are going to see. Or maybe we can call it two different attitudes. Maybe we could even kind of talk about the idea that there is this kind of the dividing line is there. However, one of the things that students often forget to do when talking about this topic is to treat traditional conservatism and one nation conservatism as separate forms. And because traditional and one nation conservatives are broadly in line, it's very useful to say in your essays, there is agreement between traditional and one nation conservatism that ... Because when you're talking about agreements and disagreements between conservatism, don't forget the agreements. So if you've got two forms that agree, that gives you a comparison in your essay and allows you to be scoring marks. But you do get disagreements between the two when it comes to social responsibility and society and things like that, but they're minor. This is major. So let's look at the society and the state through the lens of traditional conservatism, with a few references to the types as we go. So let's talk about society. First of all, conservatives believe that it is an organic hierarchy fueled by tradition and religion. And so a lot of the ideas we're going to see here, it's recapping what we've seen from Burke and Hobbes. This organic hierarchy that is natural, it is there. It is not a meritocracy. It may change slowly over time, but we are not going to be throwing away the existing structures. We do have perhaps a ruling class. And remember, at the time when most of these people were writing, there was still a monarchy, or certainly lords and ladies. And think about the House of Lords and the House of Commons. That there was the aristocracy was a key part, an inbuilt part of the political system by birth. They also believe that society should be built with property owners. No, that's not the phrase I want to use. Should contain people that own property or are able to own property, because this brings stability to society. If you own, using the literal definition of property, a house, you aren't going to want the society collapse and for there to be riots and for you to lose your house. And the same if we use property to kind of mean businesses and money and finance. A stable society keeps your property safe. So therefore, a society of property owners, no matter what your wealth or social class, whether your property is huge or whether your property is small, a society of property owners will be more stable than people who feel they have nothing to lose. A society should change to conserve. Edmund Burke. I went through this in a previous video in great detail, so I'm not going to do that again. But I will develop this point here. Empiricism is experience. Things we know, we can see, that are measurable, that we can kind of say, okay, that did this did this, over radicalism and rationalism. So to put it blunt, things that we know work are better than things that we want to try. If you remember that what Burke was saying about this idea about abstract rationalism, I think that was the phrase I had up on the board. But he believes in using what has worked previously and the traditions of society to keep our society stable. And that means so the structure of society is what has worked in the past, so they aren't going to be massively overhauling it and creating meritocracies and kind of throwing away the existing social classes and things like that, or attempting to give equality of opportunity, all the things that the liberals and socialists might want to see. We're not going to do that here because that's pretty radical, and it also kind of throws away what we've kind of had before. The One Nation conservatives see that society, a group of people, community living together, has this noblesse oblige, the idea that the upper classes have a responsibility to care. But of course, it isn't just One Nation conservatives that believe in noblesse oblige, because it was there in the ideas of Burke as well. But One Nation conservatives definitely take it to the next step, to speaking about duty of care. And when we talk about Disraeli, I will flesh out those concepts for you. But the neoliberals, or the New Right, and I will apologise for being confusing here. Sometimes I put NL and sometimes I put NR, but I'm referring to the same thing. It's either neoliberalism or New Right. It's this third branch of conservatism, are different. They see, because they have certain liberal views, some liberal views within their conservatism, they see society as atomized, separate, small, individuals separate from one another and capable of making decisions in their own way, and therefore not connected together through one nation in the same way, and not needing this hierarchy of tradition and religion to keep society stable. We will flesh out these ideas as we cover each of those topics. So our final slide in this video, the state. Traditional conservatism believes in an authoritarian state with a ruling class. That means powerful state, unquestionable state, one that is willing to use force when necessary, one that is willing to punish its citizens when they step out of line, with a gentry or an aristocracy, perhaps, that has been the traditional and continuing rulers of that society. You know, the vast majority of MPs back then were Oxford, Cambridge kind of graduates. Many of them came from important families. This is not bringing in comprehensive school students to demonstrate kind of representation. You know, remember how Burke believes in kind of a representative democracy. He believes that you elect a representative who will make the decisions on behalf of everyone else. And so the representative is likely to be an educated man, probably at this time, who is going to make decisions on behalf of those who are poorer or from the lower classes. This state is there to uphold the law, to keep order, to enforce traditional values, and to promote the religion. Now, of course, that means that different conservatives in different countries around the world will probably have a different religion. You know, Britain is traditionally seen as being a kind of a Christian country, but of course other countries are have Judaism at their core, or Islam at their core, or different types of kind of Christianity. But what's interesting is that conservatives in different countries always see whatever their religion that they have as integral to keeping the stability of their society. And then often those traditional values come from whichever religion it is that they follow, which is why you get debates over, you can probably think of some of the kind of moral debates that take place even to this day, whether it's over the rights of women, homosexuality, abortion, but there are others that have taken place over time about the traditional values. But the state should be willing to change to conserve, and on occasion that will mean that the state will intervene in both society and the economy in order to conserve the overall structure out of the country and the state. And I will show you some examples of that when we get to the kind of the one nation kind of conservatism, but it should be willing to make changes when necessary, as well as upholding the tradition. The state, of course, and you'll see some similarities between the society ideas and the state ideas, because often what the state does impacts the community. So beliefs about society, beliefs about state are often like it's the same thing, but they look for the differences. But here, if you're going to have a society where you're going to look after one another, that means that the state has to fulfill that role and therefore has a duty of care to its citizens, no matter their class. But there are disagreements between traditional and one nation conservatives over welfare and perhaps even foreign policy, and we'll look at that in a future video. But it is also worth talking about mentioning that neoliberals agree with nearly this whole slide. Now they do, if we talk about the new right in general, the new right does believe in traditional values and religion and upholding law and those kind of things. But most of the rest of it makes way for a far more kind of liberal meritocracy, freer economy approach, which we will talk about as we get to it. Thank you for watching today. I hope that helped you understand the types of conservatism, the things you need to know, and gave you a better understanding of society and the state. If you liked the video, don't forget to like it, and if you did want to see more, then do subscribe. In our next video, we will be looking at Benjamin Disraeli, and we will be discussing one nation conservatism before the Thatcher-Reagan revolution of the 1980s thrusts us into the new right revolution. Take care, and I'll see you soon. Bye.